All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Harry McCaskill. Welcome back to another ShareWise webinar. I'm one of the senior advisors, and today we're very, very lucky to have Alexander with us, the managing director of Acusensus. He's got a few key updates that he wants to mention, and a little bit of a Q&A session this morning. So everyone in the comments or everyone there watching live, it's a good chance to drop a question. Alex is more than happy to go through a few things. I've got a few questions of my own as well. But Alex, thanks for your time. And on behalf of ShareWise, we're very, very excited to have you on board.
Thanks for having me today, Harry.
More than a pleasure, I must say. So for those sort of new to potentially, the ACE company and a little bit of that industry, why don't you give us a bit of an insight into Acusensus for new shareholders or anyone looking to learn a little bit more?
Yeah, can do. So the company was founded back in 2018. So we're a road safety technology company, and we're most well known as a company that pioneered mobile phone detection camera enforcement. So we designed an enforcement camera solution to detect drivers using their mobile phones while they're behind the wheel, and then send out notices, much like a speed camera, basically, for mobile phone-based enforcement. So drivers using their phones, major source of road trauma, give or take 20% of road trauma caused by that. So that was why we came about. And the very first program was in New South Wales at the end of 2019. And so that was a world first program for mobile phone enforcement, really, really successful in changing behaviours and saving lives. So when we first started, about 1 in 80 drivers on the New South Wales road network was using a mobile phone when they went past one of our cameras. Now that's down at something like 1 in 1,000. So a really strong behaviour change. And in the first 2 years of the program, road fatalities in New South Wales dropped 20%, while the rest of the country went up 8%, unfortunately. And so a strong correlation with road fatality and injury reduction as well.
Yeah.
From there, we're an R&D led company, so keep innovating. So we then added seatbelt enforcement as well. So about 20% of people killed in a vehicle are not wearing their seatbelts. And Queensland was the first jurisdiction in the world to go live with that. So their program in the middle of 2021 was mobile phone seatbelt enforcement with us. And so then that led to some similar changes in driver behaviour and similar road trauma reduction versus the rest of the states. We also have continued to broaden out that solution, enforcement camera solution. We also supply speed enforcement. So about 40% of mobile speed camera enforcement in New South Wales is delivered by Acusensus, and all of the regional trailer-based enforcement in Queensland for speed enforcement as well. We've been growing our number of clients. We have 4 of the states and territories in Australia using our technology to deter drivers using their mobile phones. And we've also been trying to take this technology overseas as well. Excuse me. So if you look at FY24, we had about $50 million of revenue. 4% of that is now offshore. And so we have subsidiaries in the United States and the United Kingdom as well. So that's where most of our offshore revenue is coming from. So there's still quite a lot of growth still to go for us in the Australian market for enforcement camera services. And then a lot more to go offshore, particularly for us, the United States and the United Kingdom.
Well, it seems like there's a lot happening. It is very, very impressive that obviously over 6 years you've gone from 0 to $50 million in revenue. What do you think has been the biggest contribution to that, and the best sort of investments or the most significant milestones you made throughout the time?
Yeah, I think we're particularly proud of having these solutions deployed and actually seeing the behaviours change. We've had a steady increase in the number of contracts that we've had. So just to give you a bit of a sense of how our revenue model works, we have enforcement cameras that are either trailer-based or on fixed infrastructure, for example, mounted on variable message signs. And we own those assets. and we then deploy them where our government customers tell us to deploy them. We maintain them, service them, certify them, and then we do the first level of human review of the data that comes off those systems. We have basically like a fixed monthly fee for these services. So it's recurring revenue contracts. Our contracts vary from typically 3 to 5 year base periods, and then there's a couple of options. So that it's quite long-term, stable revenue for the company for a consistent service that we deliver.
Yeah, okay. And you mentioned 4% of that revenue comes offshore. What percentage do you want to get that up to? And is there a sort of a clear, I guess, strategy and plan you have to get there, and whatever figure that might be?
Yeah, so that's grown from 1% a year ago, and we put out in the investor deck for the full year results that we see 100% growth in the US and the UK through this coming financial year. Ultimately, we've got our Australian market, and we're trying to solve a global problem with a globally applicable solution. And so there's, $48 million worth of revenue in the Australian market at the moment. The US and the UK are both larger markets than Australia, with a propensity to spend on traffic enforcement services. And so I would like to see over time our subsidiaries in the US and the UK being as large or larger than the Australian business, really.
Yeah, excellent. And I guess outside of the US, is there any key, well, I guess in the US, is there major competitors, or do you find that they don't focus too much on road safety? And is the rules, regulations, and the government stuff over in the US a lot different to the Australian markets?
Yeah, it is a little bit different. So we're trying to go into the United States with the advanced style enforcement, so the AI-based enforcement of mobile phone and seatbelt, and also a little bit of speed enforcement. Most of the market that currently exists in the US is in red light and speed enforcement. And we haven't really seen competitors come into our space, which is that sort of advanced enforcement.
Yep.
And really politically, it is a bit different. Like, automated enforcement cameras are actually quite widely accepted in Australia, less so in the United States. And we recognize that by actually adjusting and changing our solution and our product. So we have a product over there we call Heads Up Real Time. And so you put a trailer by the side of the interstate or the highway, and it screens the cars going past it or the trucks for mobile phone use, seatbelt, speeding, license plate, and forwards the imagery to a waiting police officer or police officers who can then intercept and pull over that vehicle if they're breaking some of those rules. And some of the behaviors are really quite dangerous. And we see drivers who are simultaneously using a phone, not wearing a seatbelt, and speeding excessively, like at least 11 miles an hour over the limit. And that's up to 1 or 2% of drivers on US roads. And those drivers have about a 180 times increased fatality risk over a sober, attentive driver.
Right.
So there's quite a lot of almost over in the United States.
Yeah, okay. And I guess what role, because there's a bit of a confusion sometimes between what role you play as obviously Acusensus and what role the government plays in the road safety. What would you say your key role is compared to the government?
Yeah, so we see ourselves very much as a partner to government to enable them to complete their mission, which is ultimately in saving lives, reducing crashes, injuries, and fatalities. So we supply the technology and the service. And at the end of the day, what we're actually supplying to the government is confirmed prosecutable evidence of a dangerous driver behavior that the government can then prosecute and hopefully deter that driver from doing that same behavior again in the future, and thereby making the road network safer for all of us.
Right. Okay. So you supply and give the government the ability to enforce government policy.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I have a bit of a question from my end. Obviously, a lot of shareholders like to know, I guess, a little bit more about management team, who's actually running the business behind the scenes. So can you give us a little bit of insight into your background and everyone else, in the on the board or in the team that that is there behind the scenes with you?
Yeah, sure. So we have a four-person board. Chair Raven and managing director myself. We're both founders of the company. So Raven in a non-executive sense and myself in an executive sense. And then two NEDs in independent NEDs in Mike and Sue.
Yep.
Really good, sensible board managing the company and focus on the long term for the company. And we see a lot of long-term growth in Acusensus.
Right.
Me, I'll give you some background. My story starts, I guess, probably in 2013 when my friend James was run over and killed by a impaired and distracted driver. And so it's a fairly personal, issue for me. And
Yeah.
then from sort of 2015 onwards, you could see road fatalities across the developed world rising again after decades of declines, and that ultimately led to the formation of Acusensus to try and do something about it. And then we've got quite a lot of people within the company who are extremely well credentialed from the enforcement camera industry. Just as an example, Jeff Collins, who leads up our United Kingdom division. He is an absolute industry expert, brought in average speed cameras into the UK, for example, and very well regarded and known. So we're seeing a lot of really good traction in the UK as well. I think to a certain extent off the back of having the right people in the company.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you can have a great product and a great idea, but if you don't have the right team behind you, it is hard to get it off the floor. And Alex, sorry to hear about your loss those many years ago, but I guess it kickstarted something that can hopefully save many lives in the future, and is already by purely just the stats that you mentioned earlier. When you've got obviously operations in the UK and the US, which is there a dominant market that you want to crack first before the other, or are they going to work in I guess in this cohesive manner to the same sort of I guess trajectory as Australia?
Yeah, there's an interesting graph that we put into the FY24 investor presentation, just showing the revenue from Australia versus the US versus the UK. And so in Australia, we've been enforcing actively, or the government has been enforcing using our technology for the last 4 years or so. In the USA, that's only been just over a year. So our first client in the United States was North Carolina State Highway Patrol, and they enforced from July last year. And then fast forward a year, we now have also Georgia and Arkansas as well joining that in enforcing it as well, and then a number of other states for data collection contracts.
Yeah.
And you get the bit of that domino effect that people don't want to move first. There's a lot of risk in moving first for a government, but happy to go second once somebody's proven the way.
Of course.
Then the UK is 1 year behind that, where just in the last few months, we've had our first customer going to ongoing enforcement. So that's Devon and Cornwall, the county of Devon and Cornwall. They're now for the next 12 months actively enforcing. And that's really important because they can show then the way for the other counties that they have a big problem, the technology can be used to solve that problem, and that they can fund that technology. They can prove out how that gets funded. And so the job for us is to go, okay, well, we've got one county in Devon and Cornwall, and then there's another 9 counties in the UK that have enforced using our technology, but aren't ongoing long-term users of the technology.
Right. Yeah.
There are another 9 who have experienced the technology but haven't enforced yet, and then another 23 or 24 counties who haven't yet tried the technology at all.
Right.
So sort of a bit of a pipeline or a progression.
Yeah, of course, that makes sense. Now, I've got a question that's come through here from Dean. He says there appears to be some reasonable buying in the stock this month. Obviously, I was looking at the chart earlier. We have seen a little bit of a run up on the on the chart. Now he's asking, can you give us any visibility on the potential source of the buying, or on the support of the price?
Yeah, I think we've had a fair bit of extra support since we released the full year results and the investor presentation. And we're fairly consistent, I think, as a company in delivering to deliver what we say that we're going to do. And I think what changed for us was just how we informed the market on where we were going to go over the next or this financial year, FY25, and just gave a little bit more color on how you could look at and regard the company. So obviously, we release a set of headline financial numbers, but really to understand the company, you have to sort of go a level underneath that. And we were trying to explain that to investors this year to understand, well, you've got a profitable Australian business, whereas you have unprofitable offshore businesses because we're investing money in growing those businesses for the long term. We're starting to see those, key milestones in those markets that show and justify that they should ultimately be quite successful. And the other one I haven't talked about on this call yet is we're also pioneering a new kind of work health safety technology for road workers, and that also requires investment. So you've got a really good, long, stable business in Australia funding a lot of these new initiatives that will deliver growth over the longer time frame.
Excellent. Now, I guess for yourself, you've been at the company a long, long time. Obviously, you're a founder. You've seen the industry develop. You've seen competitors come in, maybe come out as well. Where would you say you stand when it comes to the competitors? What sets you apart? Because again, it is a fairly large industry. You've got a little bit more of a traditional product compared to a number of competitors. But what is your key competitive advantage? Is it the AI, or is there other aspects?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of ways to answer this question, because on the one hand, we have very advanced technology in the mobile phone and seatbelt enforcement, where we've had more vehicle transits go past our solutions than any other company or person in the world, basically. And so all those are opportunities to train and improve an artificial intelligence system. We continue to invest in research and development. So really good, high quality images. At the end of the day, what you're supplying is a picture that will hold up in court, and continue to improve that and to stay well. Now you've got just the more mechanical, mundane elements of delivering this kind of service in the trailer platform, and how you have a really high quality but safe platform for both motorists and for our own workers. So you got a lot of different bits of IP, and then other aspects like the patent protection on those. So that's sort of on that advanced side. So we don't really see anybody who's as advanced technologically as what we're offering for that. But we also supply speed enforcement, which is quite a commoditized industry. And I think sets us apart a little bit in speed enforcement is that we genuinely want to solve the road safety problem. And there's a key ethos for us, and it's part of our values within the company. And so we see ourselves very much as the partner to government, and somebody that government can depend on and trust in Acusensus. And so I think that helps us to secure some business in the more commoditized areas of speed enforcement. Yeah, as we like to say internally, we always want to delight our customer. So we keep them at the absolute forefront for us.
Beautiful, beautiful. Just as you were answering that question there, for me, we had one coming from Paul. He mentions, obviously, as I believe as well, the Australian side of the business seems very, very well established. You've got the government mandating the use, but is there further growth opportunity in Australia, or is it just simply maturing as a business and continuing to expand, or is there other avenues in that regard?
Yeah, certainly. So on the enforcement camera side, if you look at mobile phone seatbelt enforcement, if you look at mobile phone enforcement, we have 4 of the 8 states and territories utilizing our technology. So then there's still another 4 to go potentially.
Yeah. Still another 100% potential growth.
Yeah. On seatbelt enforcement, we have Queensland and New South Wales using the technology, and the ACT and South Australia are using our technology for mobile phone enforcement, but could easily enable the seatbelt enforcement module, which is a software add-on. So we've sort of got only 2 out of 8 jurisdictions for seatbelt enforcement.
Yep.
And speed enforcement, we're at 2 out of 8 jurisdictions as well. And so I think there is potentially still some growth to go in the Australian side of the business. It's not going to be orders of magnitude, unlike the US and the UK, which absolutely can be an order of magnitude growth from where we are now. But there's still quite some good steady growth in Australia to go, I think.
Yeah, of course. And obviously, there's a lot of positives, but if we look at the risk and the challenges you're faced with at the moment, why is it that you've only got 4 out of 8 states and territories using certain parts of the business and services, and 2 out of 8 for the other? What do you think is the challenge in that regard? Is it competitors, or is it simply just getting the name out there?
Yeah, I guess a little bit of both, but probably more importantly, this is inherently a political thing, and we're trying to introduce new modes of enforcement. So we're trying to introduce for the first time mobile phone enforcement, for the first time seatbelt enforcement. And so the biggest thing that will slow down that kind of adoption is actually just politics and machinery of government. And so working with the governments to get them to the right point where they feel confident starting to enforce.
Okay, and I guess when it comes to the most challenging part of the business, sticking with the risk and things like that, what do you see the biggest risk in? What do you see the biggest challenge being?
Biggest challenge and biggest risk. I probably just flow on from that last question, from the last answer, which is just it's down to the sort of political engagement. We know the technology works, and we know that it saves lives, and obviously it's very well adopted in Australia now, and so this is now the norm to utilize this for enforcement. So not too much risk in the Australian business. Internationally, we still need to bring people along for that journey. Obviously, we've got those early key milestones in both the United States and the United Kingdom. So we need to capitalize on that and ensure that the rest of the states and counties sort of follow the early adopters.
Yep.
And then there's also across the rest of the world, in that we are solving a global problem with a globally applicable solution. And so how do we try and convince new government customers right across the globe to start adopting this kind of technology?
Yeah, that makes sense. Now we've had a question, 2 of the same question, but it's come from Charles here. Can you expand further on your road safety protection technology? And then obviously to add to that, can you talk about the potential opportunity in the road worker safety as well?
Yeah, so we've been working on this technology for a few years now, and we've just reached the point, I guess, where we're quite confident on our product market fit. And so we've been talking to investors and spent some time through the FY24 investor deck explaining this technology to investors a lot more. So just a quick briefing on what are we developing. So we're developing a road worker safety tool. So it's a WHS sort of product line where each worker at the roadside is given a wearable device, and we have detection base stations at that site. So we detect all the general public vehicles that are going by the roadwork site and identify if any of those vehicles are going to pose a danger to workers. And then we also detect all of the plant and machinery moving around within the roadwork site. And so we can provide to each worker about a 5-second notification to them that they could be about to be hit by a vehicle or by plant and machinery. So improve their safety. So working by the roadside is one of the highest risk occupations in the country. And so we felt that this was something that we could pioneer in and develop this tool that it's almost like PPE, personal protective equipment for the worker. So that's the first level of the solution that provides that immediate, alert to workers. But then also what we're doing is effectively digitizing the work site. And so we know where all the workers are, we know where all the plant machinery are, and we know where vehicles are going by. And so we can then have proactive safety for that work site through a cloud-based and AI-driven platform that then people, our customers, can look at that and get alerts that, hey, there's a lot of near misses here, or this particular site, part of the site is dangerous and should be addressed. These particular workers are often put in harm's way a lot more than others, or have more near misses than others. That's the next level of value that the solution gives. And then we see sort of another level above that as well over time in the data that we are being able to collect and analyze on what's happening on roadwork sites across the country and in 2026, across the globe.
Yeah, wow. So there's a clear opportunity in that regard. I know, the road worker safety is a big priority in Australia. Like you said, one of the highest risk jobs out there. Now, I guess from your perspective, what's the time frame in being able to get that technology to the market? Is it continuing to develop AI, or is it simply you've got the sort of technology, it's just more testing it and making sure that there is no mistakes?
Yeah, well, this year we've had a key milestone in that the technology is actually being actively piloted on roadwork sites, initially across Victoria, and from this month or next month will be from across different sites across Australia. So we've got a really great partner in Fulton Hogan. So it's a pilot customer and partner in developing the technology, exposing us to all the different kinds of sites and refining the solution and the product. So go into the production run design, which would occur at the end of this year. And so then from in calendar 2025, we should see that iteration of design in a higher volume going through different work sites across the country. And then that'll inform us for what we have to do for an international rollout. We already see demand from our overseas markets. People in the US and the UK are talking to us about this already, but we'll refine it and roll it out in Australia first and then go international after that. But yeah, it's potentially a very, very large market. There's tens of thousands of workers by the roadside every day just in this country alone.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, Alex, I would like to thank you for your time, and we've got no more questions coming in unless someone wants to pop one more that Alex can answer and go through. But just I guess leave the viewers there with one last thing about ACE. Is there any key points, milestones, or anything they should be looking out for in the next 6 to 12 months, and anything you want to leave us with?
Yeah, thanks, Harry, and thanks everybody for your questions today. I'd encourage viewers to look at ACE in a few different segments. We have this very well-regarded, established, profitable Australian business, and then an immense amount of opportunity that's already been validated with some key milestones in our offshore endeavours in the UK, and to the point where we're growth in those markets through this financial year. And then there's a huge opportunity in the road worker safety technology space that, again, we are absolutely pioneering in, and that could over time be a really large division of the business and perhaps even larger than enforcement.
Well, best believe I'll be watching and I'll be keeping an eye out. It is very, very exciting, the potential growth of ACE. I think we've just had one more come through really quickly from Dean again. He says, international is only a small part of your revenue. Where would you like to see the split in the future? I think you did mention that earlier, but he might have missed it. But where do you see the split? Just for the second time.
Yeah, well, I guess if we look at, we've got that core pillar of Australia and then developing the pillars of the international business, and you might have 1, 2, or 3 of those let's say US, UK, rest of world, that could each be larger than Australia. So I think ideally our international revenue grows to more than 50% of our revenue over time, that there is a larger opportunity offshore than there is actually.
Just simply on the basis that it's a larger area, country, and more people in the US and in the UK.
Yeah, that's right.
Excellent. Well, Alex, like I said, it's a pleasure, and everyone, this is recorded. So if you missed anything, or you want to sort of just go back, double check a few things, it's going to be on our YouTube channel. I'm sure Alex will put that on a few of his socials. But again, Alex, thanks for your time. I know you're a busy man, but this is another ShareWise webinar. My name is Harry McCaskill, and looking forward to the next one.
Thanks, Harry.
No worries. Talk soon.